Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Palmy, and in today's video we're going to look at something that I struggle with a lot and I know a lot of you struggle with, and that's portrait lighting. So let's get to it. Okay, so here we are in Daz Studio, and today we're going to look at portrait lighting specifically for females and males. They do differ a lot, and that's why we're going to cover both of them. And the method that I will be covering is something you can use in anything, so you can use it, everything's all included in Daz Studio. There's no extras you need to buy or anything, so it's all included. It's just using the actual features that Daz Studio has and using them to the best of our abilities. Right, so when we're talking about portraits, what we're talking about is normally from the shoulder up. So at the moment, my character, the actual camera is in the wrong position, so we need to create a new camera first and do the actual positioning of the camera. So we need to create new camera, and I want to use the perspective view where it is right now. I want the camera to start from there, so I do copy from active view. If I did default settings, my camera would be at the bottom here and I have to bring it up. So this just saves time. Sometimes your camera can get lost. We're basically just taking the position of the perspective view camera. So do accept and go to my camera. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to right now just position the camera where it should be in our portrait mode, in our portrait view. So something like this is okay. Now obviously you would have a pose or some sort of expression. I'm not going to do that now, but that's what you would have to kind of add value to the portrait. Another thing that most people do is they have it like this, straight on. Now I'm guilty of this. I've done this loads where I've just had it straight on, and actually that's kind of boring. You don't want it straight on. You want the body position to move a little bit. You want maybe the camera at an angle, just to spice things up and make it look different to everybody else's. Because if you see 50 of these kind of images like this renders, and then if you see one like this, which one's going to stand out the most? The one that's not facing the camera. You're going to be like, oh, that looks different. Your brain will kind of think, oh, that looks different. I want to see more. So there we go. So I'm going to have it something like this, which is fine. Obviously it would have some sort of expression. You could add on some sort of smile, whatever expression, whatever you want to have, which is fine. And now we're just going to turn on NVIDIA Iron mode so we can get to see what is happening. So with our portraits, what we normally have is we have a backlight, a fill light, and a key light. So for our backlight, we're going to use the actual sun sky for our backlight. So we're going to kind of highlight the edges here, and we're going to catch a bit of the hair, which is going to look really, really cool, and the edges down here as well. So to do that, we need to go to render settings, environment, and I just want to use sun sky only. Actually, not sun sky only. What I actually want to do is turn off the environment map. So I'm going to turn that off to none. And what that does is that automatically goes into sun sky mode, and it allows us to use a spotlight as well. If I just went into the sun sky only mode, then it would only use sun sky. I wouldn't allow us to use a spotlight. So that's the reason why we're doing this, because we're going to use the spotlight as our key light. So I'll go back to my environment. Now what I want to do is I want to move the direction of my sun so it's behind, and so we're getting the highlights from the back here. So we're getting our backlight from the back. So the way we could do that is the dome rotation. You might need to play around with the SSS time and SSS day to get the angle that you want. So I'm going to do that right now. So the angle of the sun that I want. So as I move it around, the angle of the sun will move and it will change. So something like 3 o'clock might be okay. That date and time might be okay. And then I'm going to use a dome rotation. Now with the dome rotation, it's a bit of guesswork. So I generally do it in 45-degree increments. So I'll start with 45 and see where that takes me. Okay, I need to do a lot more, maybe 180. So 180. There we go. Lucky me. There you go. Lucky for me. We've got our backlight now. That's probably a bit too much. So maybe try something a bit. Let's try 200, see that is. So now that's too much now. So now I need to know it's less than 180. So we need to go less than 180. Let's try 160. What I'm trying to get is get a little bit of light here, just here on the edge. And I've got some on that edge there, which is great. And I've got some lovely sunlight highlights there for the hair as well coming. That's great as well. Let's try 150. How does that look? Let's try 130, just to push it a bit. Okay. Now obviously lighting is up to you how you want to do it. There's no correct way or wrong way to do lighting. It just depends what you're looking for. So what method I'm showing you here is kind of like a general basics, and then you can work your way from there. So now we've got the sun sky. I like my backlighting, it's pretty good. Now I want to increase the intensity. So I want to go to SSS sun disk intensity. So what this will do is this will increase the intensity of the sun. Okay, so let's try something like 2 and see what that looks like. You'll see immediately it's like really bright here. There you go. Now if you want something bright and you've got these shadows here that are very, very sharp, what we can do is we can increase the SSS sun disk scale. So what that does is that will soften the shadow. So if you look at here, when I choose a number, it will start to soften. So we've got 4 there. I'll try something like 10, and you'll see that it will get very soft. See, you can see that the shadow's gone very soft there. So it's no longer sharp, it's very like soft, and here as well. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get this soft lighting, because females generally have soft lighting, whereas males have very harsh lighting to accentuate those features that males normally have. Okay, so you can play around with these settings. So maybe 10 is too much, maybe something like 7, something like that. That looks okay. So that's great. So we got like our backlight from our sun, and now we need to add a spotlight for our key light. Okay, so I'm just going to come out of IRA preview mode, go into texture shading just to be a bit quicker. So create new spotlight, and yes. So basically what I'm doing here, apply active viewport transforms from the camera. So basically my position of the spotlight, will be where my camera is. So normally when you add a spotlight at the default setting, it's right at the bottom, like 0 axis, 0 Z axis, 0 X axis, 0 Y, which is right at the bottom of the screen. I don't want to do that. I want it where the camera is, so it's easy for me to find it. So there we go. And now I'll go into my spotlight here. And now we need to move it across. Now with the spotlight, what we want to do is we want to move it to the left here, but we want it higher up. So it's kind of like a side light, and we just want to bring it down and probably zoom off a bit there. So what we're trying to do is want it up like the sun would be, like a sun comes from the up, okay, comes from a higher angle, and we want it down a bit, and I want it to the side a bit. So that we'll see how that looks. So I'll go to my original camera position, and let's check the IRA preview. Just give it a second for it to kick in. Okay, can't see much there because obviously we haven't done the lighting, so we need to go to our parameters, light, and really punch this up. So in terms of our flux lumens, we'll have to punch it up quite a bit. So something like 150,000. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that's a bit bright, but we've got our lighting. And let's have a look at this further now. So lighting is in a pretty good position. At the moment, the geometry is point, which is very harsh lighting. Generally for portraits, you want to choose rectangle or disc. I prefer rectangle, but you can choose disc. It just softens the light. So I'm going to go to rectangle. There we go. Now we can soften the light even more by changing the spread angle. So we can change the spread angle to make the spread angle smaller. So something like 45, which has made it brighter because the angle's a bit gone in a bit more. And then to counteract that is we can increase the amount of softness, so the height and the width of the actual rectangle. So something like, try something like 30 first, see what that looks like. Okay, probably a bit more, 50. Now you have to obviously figure out what is the best for you. And this will soften the shadows. You can see these shadows are not sharp anymore. They're pretty soft. Okay, and the light is quite bright there. So we can either change the lumens here, or generally you can use intensity here. So this is kind of like an overall intensity. So I might bring that down to 50%. There we go. So it's not like a harsh light. It's very soft light. Maybe it needs to be a bit more than that. Let's try 60. And let's just go back to the camera. There we go. So that's pretty good. Doesn't look too bad. I like the look of that. So we've got some nice lighting here. The front, we've got a backlight here as well. And then you're probably thinking, where is our filler light? Now, a filler light is coming from the actual sky dome. So if I turn on the draw dome, you can see that our filler light's coming from the actual dome. Okay, so we're using that as our filler. Okay, so we've got our wonderful lighting. So we've got some lovely highlights in the hair now, here at the top. We've got our backlight as well. And we've got our key light as well. Also what we've got these wonderful lights here for the catch lights as well for the eyes, which most photographers love to get these in because it looks so good. And the eyes look very realistic now, as you can see. So that's what we're trying to do with the key light, is get this kind of like, get the light in the eyes, and it looks amazingly realistic, which will make your portraits stand out a lot. So whether you're doing it for males or females or whatever kind of portrait lighting, try to get these catch lights. It really brings the eyes into life, and then doesn't make your character look like it's some sort of 3D model. It makes it look like a real person. Now obviously this character, this figure is very high quality. It's HD quality. So when you're doing portraits, use HD quality characters. Cannot recommend HDs enough. You must use HD quality if you're looking for portraits, if you're doing portraits, because the quality is realistic. It's just unbelievable. Okay, so this is very simple lighting setup. There we go. And it's more or less done. All you would need to do now is literally just tweak your values. So you can tweak the values. You can also play around with a bit of color. So for example, if I went to my spotlight and changed the color, this color here, to something like yellow, very low colors though, very, very low colors. So something like this, and see what that looks like. Not much difference there, maybe a bit more. There we get that yellow light. So sometimes try yellow, and then sometimes try blue as well. You'll get different effects. So you only want very, 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 very small amounts. You don't want to go all the way up here. You just want to try very, very low values here, saturation values. And you'll get different effects. So this is getting a bit of a cold feeling, and that's probably a bit too. Now we're getting the kind of the light here as well. We can see a bit more of the light from the sun. Now we can obviously increase that. If I wanted to do a bit more intensity, we can go 3. And that's very, very bright now. And then I can do the sun disk scale, so I can increase that even more. So maybe 15. There we go. So you can play around with the settings like that. If you don't like the colors, that's fine. But just something to consider when you're doing portrait lighting, just to give it a bit of a twist and see how it is. Okay, so that was the portrait lighting for females. Now, how do we do those wonderful black and white pictures that you see in magazines, where they've got like a white background and then they've got this wonderful lighting with the front, which is called high key lighting, where the front looks very, very bright and you've got this lovely shadow in the background as well. So I'm going to go through that right now. So I'm just going to turn up this eye array first. And what we need to do now is I just need to go to my perspective view, come out a bit. I need to change that color actually back to white for that spotlight, otherwise the black and white won't look so good. So the first thing we need to do is add a plane. So we go to create, primitive and plane. You don't need 100 division, just the one is fine. Make sure it's plane, world center and Y positive axis. Size doesn't matter because we're going to change that, and divisions 1 is fine. So I'll click on my plane here in the scene tab. I'm going to go to my Z rotate. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees because I want it standing up. Sorry, not my Z rotate. My X rotate 90 degrees. There we go. And I want to translate it up. And I want to just scale it out. Okay, and I want to move it back. So Z translate back. Now this will obviously change depending on how we get this right. Sometimes we need to move it forward, sometimes we need to move it a bit back. So I'll leave it there for now. And what we need to do now is we just need to move our spotlight. So I need to go back to my spotlight. And now I need my spotlight literally showing right in the face. So I need to move it around. Again, still coming from above. There we go, that looks okay. Might need to be a bit more higher up, I don't know. We'll see how that looks. So let's go back to my camera. Let's go back to, and my camera needs to, camera's fine where it is actually. The camera is fine. NVIDIA iRay preview mode. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We've got a little shadow as well, casting in the back there as well. So we've got our kind of our initial look there. Obviously we can change the lighting. So if we wanted even more like high key lighting, we would turn down the spread angle. So maybe something like, let's try 30. And it will get very, very bright. You'll get that very high key kind of lighting. Okay, and again, obviously we can either decrease or increase the intensity if you don't like it. And so that's what that's what they do, photographers. They get this very high key lighting right in the face there and lower down here. It's very bright lighting. And then what we do now is we can go into the tone mapping, and this is where the kind of magic happens, is we can turn the saturation here to 0, which will make it black and white. Okay, we're doing this without Photoshop, by the way, so you don't need to use Photoshop to do this, although you could use Photoshop, doesn't really matter. I'm going to use this option here, crush blacks. So if I do 1 for crush blacks, it's going to make the blacks very black. So you can see the blacks get a lot darker over here. The eyes, this all gets darker. Okay, that's what crush blacks does. Now burn highlights we don't need. Burn highlights means any highlights we have, it will, so for example on the lip here, they will get progressively brighter. So if I did do that, if I went to 1, you will see the difference. You see, everything gets really, really bright, gets overexposed. We don't want that, so I'm just going to put that back to normal. Alright, and then we can also do this vignetting. So vignetting will make these areas here around here a lot darker, and we give you that vignetting effect. So if we try something like a value of 50, let's see what that looks like. There we go. So as you can see, the corners are darker now. You could also use Photoshop or GIMP or whatever photo editing software you're using, but I'm just trying to show you that we can do this in Daz Studio as well. You don't always have to go into your post-work software of your choice to do this. So there we go. So we got like vignetting effect. So with the vignetting effect, our eyes are focusing straight here because you're kind of closing down the area here. That's what we're doing with that vignette. So this is what it looks like. Obviously this looks very photorealistic. If I did a render now, took it into Photoshop, I could enhance this obviously, and it would look like it was a real person. So that's how you would do those black and white kind of photos that you see in the magazines. This is what you would use. You would use saturation, you would use crush blacks, and you would use vignetting to get that black and white look in Daz Studio. And then you can obviously go back to the lighting and then to refine your look. So if you wanted to give it a bit more intensity, say for example, let's go to 75, bring the intensity in. There we go, a bit more intensity to give that kind of high key look that we're trying to get. Again, we've got the catch lights as well. So when you're looking at this image, you can see that it looks photorealistic. You know, the actual 3D figure looks alive, doesn't look dead, so to speak. And this is what we're trying to do with our portraits. Okay, so we've covered that now, and now we're going to look at a male portrait, which is very different to what you would do with a female, and we're going to do that right now. Okay, so here we are. I've got my male model exactly in the same position where my female model was, and we're going to just go over male portraits. So let's just turn on. First thing we need to do actually before we do that is our spotlight. I just want to move to position my spotlight, so let's go back to my spotlight, and I want it coming from, again, from the side. You want it normally come from the side and above. Something like this should be okay. And then obviously you can always move it. This is not the exact position you would have it. It would be a case of experimenting where you want the shadows to fall and where you want the light to come through. So there we go. That seems to be okay for now as a base point. Great base point, great starting point. So if we go back to the camera and then put on the iRay preview, let's have a look what it looks like. So just wait for that to do. There we go. Okay. So what have we got? Let's look at the positives here. Okay. So we've got our backlight, which is our sun, as you can see here, coming here. We've got some, with our spotlight, we've got these lovely tinted effects at the top for the hair, which is really cool. We could accentuate that using your post-work techniques in whatever software you use. We've got some light coming onto the eyebrow as well, which is kind of cool as well, brings more realism. And we've got our shadows. Now with male portraits, the shadows is what we're looking for essentially, is more shadows and more harsher lighting, because male models, male portraits have more harsher lighting. Generally, not all the time, but generally, depending on what you're trying to show. So in this case, I would turn the spread angle back to normal, so 60, which makes it very soft lighting, and rectangle again. So that gives it even more. So you can see the difference now. This is a soft lighting. This is something you would use for females. Now it doesn't look great for males there, unless that's the look you're going for. So I would normally turn the intensity more, so we can increase the intensity. So we could try 150 just to get that intensity of the light up. Let's go to 200. Okay, and again I would probably increase the lumens, which we could do here. So maybe we'll try 3,500, 350,000, sorry. There we go. So we've got our harsh lighting now, and we've got our shadows here as well, which is really cool, which is what we're trying to get. We've still got the wonderful lighting here as well. Now, you could normally have your camera like this straight ahead, which is kind of boring if you ask me. But if you want to do that, you can do that. Nothing wrong with that. And as long as you've got the shadows here to kind of accentuate the features, that's what we're trying to do. You don't want lighting that doesn't accentuate the features. So you can see we've got definition around the nose here, around here as well. And we've got a bit of catch light here. We can actually add catch lights. So what we can do in that case is we can move our spotlight. So if I just come out of iRay mode, go to my spotlight, bring it around a bit more. Again, coming from the left, coming from the side, sorry. Where's that? There we go. Coming from the side, we don't want it straight on because then we won't get any of his features. So I just want to come from the side a bit more, kind of angle it from here. Let's see what difference that makes. So if we go back to our camera, go back to NVIDIA iRay mode, wait for NVIDIA iRay mode to kick in to give us that preview. Now obviously because we've changed our direction of our light, the shadows will have changed, as you can see, so we're getting more shadows here. We've got our catch lights now with the eyes, which is cool. So if I turn my camera around, kind of with that angle, so we've got the lovely lighting and the catch lights in the eyes there. We've still got our shadows, which is great. So we got the definition there. So what we could do is we could possibly use we could probably change the spread angle. So the spread angle, which means it will focus more kind of in this area and we get a bit more shadow. Obviously that will make the light very bright. So if I did it half, 30, you see that the intensity of the light will be a lot because our spread angle's gone lower. So we'll have to bring our intensity down, so maybe 125. A lot lower than that. Okay, maybe 75. And probably a bit more lower than that. Let's try 50. There we go. The main point of the tutorial is you only need very few spotlights. Remember, less is more. Most important thing is less is more. You don't need 7 spotlights and 1 point light to do amazing lighting. You only need probably 2 or 3 spotlights at the most to create the effect you're looking for. So with this effect, what have we got? We've got our backlight, which is the sun, as you can see. We could change that obviously using the dome rotation, using the sun disk intensity, how intense we want the sun, and the disk scale to increase the sharpness. So actually the disk scale I should decrease because I want more sharp shadows. So that would probably go back to 4. Okay. And I would probably change the rotation maybe. So let's have a look at the rotation, see what else we can get. Another thing we get is this very cool translucency effect with the ears, just like you would in real life. If someone shines the light to the back of your ear, you get this translucency effect. Looks more realistic. Okay, so there you go. As a bonus, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take this image right here into Photoshop and show you one way you can do to kind of accentuate the features of this image right now. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. I just want to show you a quick way as we can make to enhance the features using Photoshop using very simple methods. So the first thing I'm going to do is just duplicate the layer. So Control J to duplicate the layer. I'm going to go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters. I always do Smart Filters so I can always come back to the original image or layer that I did before I made the changes. So I always do that. And we're going to use a Camera Raw Filter, which is really cool. Very underutilized tool in Photoshop, but I think with very basic things you could do a lot with this. So let's start with the temperature. So the temperature, so do we want to use a more warmer tone, a temperature, or colder tone? So it really depends what you're looking for. I'm kind of happy with this colder tone. It's kind of cool because obviously the male feature, so some male portraits are colder tone. And now the tint, so you can choose what kind of tint. So you can have more purple, or you can have more green. Now with this kind of skin tone and with the lighting we have, the actual purple looks pretty cool. So a little bit of that. And now the exposure. So exposure will be increasing, for example, like the high key that we were talking about earlier with the female portrait. So we will be just increasing that a lot really. So there we go. Maybe something like this, 0.7 is pretty good. Obviously all these changes depend on what you're trying to show. This is just what the kind of lighting that I like to do, kind of the post work that I like to do with my renders. So it's all subjective. You choose what you want to choose. So contrast. Do we want more contrast? Do we want less contrast? So I want more contrast, so we get more defined features of our shadows there. There we go. So this is actually looking really good. I really like this because I like the shadows there, bringing out these features. Okay, pretty high on that contrast. Highlights. Now highlights. Do you want more highlights? Let's have a look. No, don't want more highlights. Actually, I want less highlights. So maybe something like this is pretty good. -25. Shadows. Now with my shadows, I want more shadows. So I want to really define those shadows. I want to bring them out. Something like that looks pretty cool as well. Now whites, let's have a look at the whites. Do I want more whites? Do I want these reflections to really come out a bit? There we go. And my blacks, let's have a look at the blacks. So I want more blacks. I want the blacks to be more blacker, more darker, to really stand out. So something like this is pretty good. Clarity, let's have a look at clarity. What does that do? So you can see it's kind of like makes it more fuzzy. If I go to the left and to the right, it kind of brings it a bit more clearer. So it's kind of like giving this fake kind of HD effect, so to speak. So we could probably increase that a bit to give it a bit of realism there. Something like 20 something is pretty good. That looks pretty good to me. Dehaze, let's have a look at dehaze. So dehaze is going to make things more hazy or not. Let's have a look. So this actually doesn't look too bad. +7. Vibrance is obvious, as you just increase the vibrance of what we already have there. So do you want more of this purple light, or do you want it to be black and white? Probably a bit more of the purple light. Looks pretty cool. And the saturation obviously increases the color, so we can have more of that color or less of that color. I'm going to leave that at 0 because I don't really want to change that. Let's click OK and see the difference it's made. So if I zoom out a bit, 100%, so we can have a look. So this was the original, and there's our new one there. So that looks so much better. If you have a look at the original, we can see that the actual lighting we did at the beginning, although it looks really great in Daz Studio, when we bring it into our photo editing software, whatever you use, GIMP, Coral Paint Shop, I believe it is, or whatever you use, whatever photo editing software you use, it doesn't have to be Photoshop. You can make significant changes, and once you get these basic techniques right, you can literally make awesome portraits that you can make very easily using these methods. Okay, so there you have it. We learned some very simple techniques in Daz Studio on how to create those portraits for males, for females, and those black and white images that you see in magazines. We also learned a bit of post-work magic in Photoshop to give your renders that va-va-voom. And if you found value in this video, if you found a lot of information helpful, hit that like button, most appreciated. If you have any comments or questions regarding Daz Studio, leave them down below as well. I'm more than happy to answer them. And make sure you subscribe as well, it helps out the channel a lot as well. And don't forget to hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss out on any more videos. And I'll see you in next week's video.